Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Hello, world traveler.
I know, Jamie, all the way back from Rome.
Yeah, 10.5-hour flight is long.
It's long.
No.
Well,
You've done
last
it
week
many times.
we were all kind of speculating on what both of your travel experiences were going to be. So did you make it back safe and sound? No delays? What was that travel like?
Safe and sound, yes. No delays. I did have delays. So coming out of DC on Thursday night, there were actually some news stories that senators were unable to make it home and people felt so bad for them. I know, bless their heart. But the flights out of Atlanta go every hour. 3 out of 4 of them were delayed. I was able to switch to one that wasn't, but my original one was delayed 4 hours. So that would have been rough, but got home only a couple hours after when I was supposed to. So not too bad in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. How about you, Jamie?
I had to wait about 2 minutes in line through security, and the flight left about 5 minutes early. So yeah, it was great.
That's awesome. And so it was just Halloween. You guys have kids. What is the sugar high level in your households currently?
Well, my oldest self-regulates sugar, so he's pretty good about it. My
Wow.
youngest, who now has discovered Kit Kats, digs through them and brings them to me and say, "Candy."
Kit Kats are a good choice.
Can't say no to that. But it's all well within reason. Nothing too crazy so far. But again, our eldest is a self-regulator, which is incredible.
That's wild. I did not have I had to be regulated for sure as a kid. It was the jackpot.
Yeah.
How about you, Jamie?
I unfortunately missed Halloween with the kids while working, so that was actually really rough. And being out in Rome and seeing all the photos and not being able to and be there with the kids, but they came back with a haul. Both of my kids, similar to Michael's, they self-regulate. They're like, they're like, I want one. Like last night for dessert, they're like, can we have one piece of candy? I'm like, yeah, you can.
This one time.
And then they're like, yeah. And then one's like, Dad, which ones do you want? You can have as much as you want. The other's like, I'm not sharing with Dad.
There you go.
That's the oldest versus the youngest.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Brandy,
Well,
you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I do not have kids, so it wasn't as candy focused, but went out and saw some live music, which was really fun, and actually had a pretty tame. All of us were kind of back hanging out at one of my friends' houses by midnight after the show. We watched watched Death Becomes Her. I don't know if you guys remember that movie from the 80s or early 90s, but it has Meryl Streep, Bruce Willis and Goldie Hawn in it, and it is so campy and crazy, but that was kind of a good Halloween movie. But yeah, my biggest project was organizing the bookshelf you can see behind me. I finally got all my books color coded, so
it's color code, not alphabetical.
Yeah, which I know is very divisive, but it's my background for meetings and stuff, so it serves dual purposes. Yeah. Well, we have some interesting topics today. I mean, of course, we've been talking about Airbnb a lot recently, but there was a really great article that Jamie shared in The Economist about Airbnb reaching its peak potentially. So, Jamie, do you want to give us kind of your summary overview of the article?
But before we jump into that, one word answer, Jamie. Has Airbnb peaked?
Its core service, yes.
Okay.
There you go. You heard it here first. That's the clickbait.
All right.
Jamie Lane says Airbnb is dead.
and that's what the article gets into is it's and it's and Brian obviously wants Airbnb to be more than just its core, and its core being defined as renting rooms and properties in like 5 markets: US, UK, Canada, Australia, uh, and as some great AirDNA data was shown in the article, and we've seen the growth in Airbnb's core markets slow dramatically the past couple years. We've seen nights booked this year in those core markets just up 4%. And so a high growth company, a tech stock, and they are expected to be growing significantly faster than that. And what we did call out too is outside of those core markets, so in more international markets, other countries around the world, they're growing north of like 14%. So they are seeing strong growth outside of their core. And what I called out in my post last night, sort of talking about it, and if you go back and listen to Airbnb's earnings calls from the day that they went public in November of 2020 through really mid 2023, all they were doing was talking about perfecting their core, and that they wanted to get their core service really good, that they wanted to see growth in their core markets. They wanted to make hosting mainstream in the US, the UK, and Canada. And they saw massive growth because of it. And then in 2023, they sort of started to pivot towards beyond the core. They wanted to grow internationally. They relaunched experiences. They launched services. They're going to be announcing hotels. And all that now is to re-accelerate growth with things outside of their core. So has their core service sort of peaked in terms of growth? Probably. Has Airbnb peaked? I don't think so. I think they do have a lot of opportunity to continue to expand beyond that core.
Yeah, I agree completely on has the core product peaked. There's only so many vacation rental homes in the country. And in fact, if anything, I wouldn't be surprised to see a slide and decline just depending on how some economic circumstances shake out over the next 2 or 3 years, where I think it's going to be a make or break moment. I'll discount services and experiences because they've tried that and repackaged it at least 3 times. The make or break is going to be, do they turn into being a more traditional OTA and offer flights, cars, and hotel rooms? And how are they going to control everything when they move into that segment, right? They are the merchant of record now. Booking and Expedia try not to be. That's a big control lever. They made how much money, Jamie, just in carry on holding on to your money?
Yeah, the interest is pretty hard to pass up.
Hundreds of millions. Yeah.
I think it was $800 million was the last number I saw. I could be wrong. Somebody can fact check me. But a substantial amount of money is just holding on to other people's money for you. I think it's going to be a hard pill to swallow for Brian to move into anything other than cool and trendy hotels. And I mean, flags are a large portion and a very quickly growing portion of hotels. Flags are now doing distribution deals like they did with Trailborn. That was unheard of 5 years ago. They are buying up, however many brands a year. It's kind of a repeat. Every month or so, we see a new brand gets bought out by a major flag. And those types of transactions only eat into what I envision Brian wanting their hotel product to look like. And if he's okay swallowing the pill and working with flagged hotels, then I think there's potential that Airbnb just does become a very high quality OTA. I do think I'm concerned about the hotel project if they don't open up the doors to the flags.
Yeah, and there's also the piece of like, as they add the hotels, there's kind of the reverse of undoing some of the consumer education where like, are people going to go to Airbnb to book hotels? I mean, I think you'll kind of have the thing where people might fall into it, right? Like, oh, I booked this and now it's a hotel, but they've spent a very, very long time hammering in like that hotels are just beige boxes and don't you want more? So then they have to be like, they're beige boxes except for these cool ones that we have hand selected for you.
Yeah. And I agree, Michael, but I also see it entirely different in the US versus Europe. There's so much opportunity for boutique and independent hotels in Europe. Like it's almost the exact opposite in the US, where in the US it's like 70% branded flagged hotels. And then it's like 30% or even less than that branded flagged hotels in Europe. So there's it. And that's where Booking has made its sort of mark on the industry of being that OTA of record for all the boutique hotels across Europe. So I do think there's so much opportunity for Airbnb to be that alternative in Europe to get the independent hotels sort of listing with them. But ultimately, it's sort of when you read the Economist article and you go down to the end, the quote from Brian and Airbnb was and that they saw this from the very beginning as a movement. It wasn't a website, it wasn't an app, it wasn't a commercial idea. Like it was a movement. And ultimately, like being able to book hotels on a site, like and 200 other OTAs, and can they make that a movement, or do they just have to and make and hotels bookable, especially in markets where they have declining hotels or short-term rental supply? And a theme of my presentation in Europe this past week was supply growth is now minuscule in both the US and Europe. And in Europe right now, supply growth this summer was 2%. We're seeing supply declining in Spain and Italy and Croatia and some of their largest markets because of regulation. And their ability to even continue to grow, much less grow at a fast rate, is going to be sort of predicated on having availability for listings and places where people are looking to travel through this site.
I am the comment about the movement. When I read this part, it's like the last couple sentences of the article, and I just had the biggest eye roll because yes, in the beginning, absolutely, this was a movement. I mean, think about they created this whole new concept. Well, that's not new concept, new to a lot of people. Instead of short-term rentals or vacation rentals, it became an Airbnb. It spawned so many different industries, and it was a movement, is a movement, right? But I think that this large tech company trying to play on emotional and philosophical ideals as they do need. He said we don't see it as a commercial idea. You need to see it as a commercial idea. I don't think you can expect to continue to create these huge cultural changes and like pulling on people's emotions and wanting something bigger and more connection when you're a big tech company now. Like you're not just some dudes in your San Francisco apartment trying something cool, trying to build a new type of product. You're just trying to hit, shareholder expectations to continue to grow. And I don't know. I just find that to be really eye-rolly and cringy when these big tech companies are trying to still play on the emotional tags that they might have had at the beginning of their journey.
Well, I'll take a slightly different position than that, Brandy. The movement piece, it was a movement. Very much so, right? And they succeeded in that. Like they completely changed how people thought about short-term rentals, markets that people were using short-term rentals, how people made money off of it. I mean, all of us here on the call are largely in part because of the hype created around Airbnb.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the name AirDNA, right? But movements end, and I'm worried they're trying to recreate another movement that just isn't there. And I'm sure Brian has tons of ideas and he's got tons of energy and brain power towards figuring something out. I just don't know if he should maybe start another business and figure out what that next movement is, because rebranding Airbnb into a flights booking portal OTA is potentially it's going to potentially crush the brand they've built so hard to build. And Paul Manzi said in a comment a minute ago, Airbnb is chasing a larger piece of the hospitality pie. And that's exactly right. They have to, because they have tammed out on short-term rentals. And hotels is the next obvious step, boutique hotels. But that's not a massive jump or change. It's also not going to 2x or 10x the size of the business 10 years from now.
Do you think, reading through this, I was, it mentioned some of their previous ventures. I totally didn't even remember the film studio circa like 2018, 2019. Do you feel that Brian has a set vision for like even what this next movement phase of Airbnb could be? Because they were so gung-ho about experiences and now it's hotels, or like what was the next movement going to be? Because it has to be one thing, I think.
Yeah, I think this is also potentially the evolution of Brian from scrappy startup founder and test and fail and test and fail and figure out what works, to in some ways maybe trying to force success through. And I feel like that's what experiences is. I actually really like the services concept. I just don't know if sitting it under the Airbnb brand makes sense.
Yeah.
Having it be a sister company makes a ton of sense, and all of your Airbnb hosts can leverage all of those services in a easy connected API and bookable experience. But does he have a vision for it? Undoubtedly. He's one of the best visionaries of our time. Does vision always correlate with reality?
Yeah, you have to be able to implement.
We might eat our words 5 years from now. Mark this, we'll save this discussion. But I think they'll have a lot more success in boutique hotels. What's after boutique is the, in this case, mini $billion question for Airbnb.
Well, I feel that also the other things like hotels and then flights and cars and all these things aren't going to be like the groundbreaking like next movement, but will help them flesh out the rest of their core offerings so that you do go to Airbnb to book all the components of your trip, right? And then that might not be this huge cultural zeitgeist movement, but it might keep their customers on their website, which I think in the end is really important.
And I just love, and The Economist is such a great publication. Like this journalist obviously did a lot of research, spent and a few days out at Airbnb's HQ interviewing all the executives, and it is sort of a headline in the sand, right? Of like, you go back and look, Brian talks about all the time, like the headlines in 2020 of is Airbnb dead? And now we've got in 2025 is this peak Airbnb? And we'll be able to look back in 3 or 4 years and see, okay, did we see the reacceleration from all this other stuff? Or was this sort of a calling out of the peak from a publication that's usually pretty keen on being able to call some of this stuff out?
Well, Jamie, it's kind of like what we talked about pre-show in the questions you were asking the audience at VRWS this week. How do you feel about the economy? It's kind of all of the signals are positive, 9 out of 10, but sentiment is down. And is that because of doom and gloom headlines like the Economist article, is Airbnb, has it peaked? Tell us a little bit more about some of that data that you were diving into.
Yeah. So loved getting to kick off the Vacation Rental World Summit. Antonio puts on an amazing show, sort of 2 days, 700 people. It sold out a full month ahead of the conference. PMs from all over the world. The ratio, amazing in terms of property managers there. And also a good mix of both property managers and investors. Talked to so many people that own 10, 15, 20 vacation rentals around Europe that were looking to expand, looking to grow. And honestly, in the prep leading up to this conference, looking at all the data, both on the economy and looking at short-term rental performance, like when I did my raise your hand if you're feeling good about the overall economy in Europe, I think I had 2 people raise their hand out of the 700.
That's Blake.
The optimists. I love it. Who were they? Call them out.
And it was absolutely bleak and really mirrored what I saw at Vrbo and a few of the conferences in the US. And then you dig into the underlying economic data, like unemployment in Europe is at all-time lows, or at least in decades lows. Incomes are growing, employment's growing. You look at short-term rental performance this summer, it was almost record levels in terms of occupancy and pretty significant growth. We saw more and more people traveling into Europe this year, especially from the US. The slowdown that we were seeing in the US didn't flow through into Europe, and supply growth is slowing. Like there was only 2% growth in Europe overall supply this summer. So you think about how you've got to compete with all this new supply. Like it was a pretty good picture, and we're actually seeing overall rate growth too. Like people had pricing power in that room, so there's absolutely a disconnect. Sentiment was down, and people are really worried about what's happening. There was maybe a front loading of spending around the tariffs. And what impact the tariffs might have. Like, is it going to pull down the global economy? So yeah, it's a wide range of feelings in that room.
Yeah, it sounds like the opposite sentiment of a founders retreat I did 2 years ago, where I asked how many of you are optimistic about next year, and 80% said yes. Yeah. Full and well knowing that a lot of those businesses were really struggling, and it was not going to be a great year. But some of that's cultural, and some of that is founder blind optimism.
Yeah, you got to have that optimism if you're leading the company. If you're going in there saying nothing's going to work, I mean, it's not a great vibe.
I get it. But to Jamie's point, all of the high level lights, we're not flashing red right now, and the proof is in the pudding. I've never seen more private equity companies foaming at the mouth trying to buy more companies than right now, because sentiment is down. People want to get out, and that's the opportunity that private equity sees. Not to mention, being able to roll up a large number of local profitable businesses is right up private equity's alley, and these businesses are profitable. You might have had a down year, but you still have $1 million in EBITDA, $500,000 in EBITDA. Private equity will bundle you up with 10 or 20 other companies and package you off to the next private equity deal. So when there's a bunch of shoppers in the market, that's either the market is massively depressed, or really smart people are seeing a big opportunity that maybe some of us that have our heads in the weeds day in and day out are not seeing.
Well, speaking of people still spending money that doesn't necessarily match the consumer sentiment, the high end of our industry is still obviously booming. There is a kind of a return to all-inclusive resorts, which I feel like that used to be like such a tacky word. There's a Forbes article now that is going through all these super luxury resorts that are doing all-inclusive. And it's so funny because I don't know, I can be a little bit of a snob about like where I go to. Like that would never be on a list of things where I know Jamie's shocked, but like if I'm going to spend a couple grand, like I want to make sure that it's exactly, I want to do all the things I want to do. I don't want the hotel to dictate all of that. And then looking at some of these all-inclusives, I'm like, well, I would maybe let the Four Seasons all-inclusive dictate what I'm going to do and what I'm going to eat.
Well, my sentiment historically has been the exact same. the worst sounding thing in the world is to go to one spot and never leave it for a week or for 4 days. Eat what they feed you and do what they tell you to do. That sounds terrible. Until I had kids and I have a couple of businesses and I'm making decisions nonstop and I don't want to do anything. And then also in travel, the hardest part for me to budget is obviously not the flights, not the hotels. It's the food and drinks. And that's where things get out of hand really quickly. You want to have the nice dinners and you want to have, cocktails before, cocktails after, and that really racks up. And as part of research for this show, my wife and I went down to one of the properties listed in this article.
Is that a write-off?
The W Punta Cana. You caught on to that, Brandy. The W Punta Cana was fantastic. It's the first all-inclusive. I talked about this a couple episodes ago. The first W all-inclusive, but the food was fantastic. I didn't have to break out the wallet the entire week. No decisions besides, this restaurant or that restaurant were made throughout the day. And it really changed my perspective on the all-inclusives. And traditionally speaking, it's the 20-somethings that are seeing how much they can drink in a single day to get their money's worth out of it. But from an adult perspective, I don't have to make any decisions. The food's going to be great. The vibe is going to be great. And, the quality is going to be there because it's a trusted brand that and like. So my perspective is completely changed. It helps massively from the budgeting standpoint. We weren't over budget by a single dollar. You knew exactly what to expect. So, I do. And at Thayer Ventures annual conference this past week, one of the topics was the resurgence of all-inclusives and that it's not any longer associated with drunk 20-somethings, and it is more couples oriented or even team offsite oriented. Great way, again, to kind of rein in expenses and make sure it's all under one roof.
Yeah, and there's kind of in a similar vein, there was a Condé Nast Traveler article about how there are a real resurgence in retreats, specifically retreats for women that are, and in the article it goes into like women of all different ages, but primarily in their 30s and 40s that were like, oh, we want to go, like these group trips are kind of getting out of hand. Like, you're not always doing what you want to be doing. And so there's these retreats that are popping up. It's basically like an all-inclusive, but like a, different version of that. You know exactly what you're paying, exactly where you're going. It's all handled for you. There's usually a theme. It might be a writer's retreat or a yoga retreat or whatever it is. And so, you're going to like all the activities that you're going to be doing and you don't have to think about it. And it's a little bit more upscale. And I think it definitely appeals to the same type of people like a W resort would as well, where trying to combat decision fatigue and wanting to get exactly what you want to get out of your vacation while also not having to make any decisions, which seem to be like diametrically opposed, but in this case, they're not.
Now hear me out. What if there is an app that you could book like experiences and services with your short-term rental?
But then they're not there. What I think Airbnb should do next is package, like, if you'd be bold enough, let Airbnb's AI plan your group trip with all the, like, pick the home, pick all the experiences, just show up and see what they build for you. I would never do that, but that could be something coming down the road.
Yeah. No, and I still haven't done an all exclusive, but I hear you, Michael. Like, it is getting more and more attractive.
It was great. I would highly recommend it. Highly recommend it.
The last time I did one was my senior year of high school in like the Mayan Riviera with like friends.
And that's the crowd we were hoping we wouldn't run into, and we didn't. So there are levels to this that if you go to a nice enough one, that it's not going to be the high school Brandies. No offense.
Yeah, we were very well behaved. But yeah, that's I definitely want to go on like one of these retreats or go to one of these resorts. So maybe I'll change my opinion coming up.
And maybe the last topic, because it was a theme of my VRWS presentation as well, was this notion of quality versus quantity. There was the heads of supply for Airbnb, Booking, and Vrbo on stage right after I went. It was really interesting to see how they're all sort of pivoting. And they've been sort of doing it over time, or sort of highlighting quality over the depth and breadth of listings that they have. And this past week, Vrbo made a new announcement with their Love by Guest badge that they're giving to their top listings. You have to have over a 9.4 out of 10. Sort of the equivalent of Airbnb's sort of top 5 or top 10% badge, and only the best are going to get it. And it's sort of that step above their premier hosts, which, as we had Tim on a few weeks ago, and he talked about how they were transitioning that to a scored by listing instead of scored at the host level. So
which is huge.
huge. So all of these platforms now really trying to highlight the best of the best listings, drive incremental bookings to them, and all great for the guests, but super scary and for property managers. One of my favorite data points recently was that top 1% badge. Only 1% of those listings that have earned that badge are managed by a property manager. So you've got to be the top 1% of the top 1% as a property manager to actually get that badge, which is crazy.
Yeah. Yikes.
Truly the best ones.
Like
it has meaning.
If you're just not even in like the top 5 listings on any, like not even page 1 doesn't even do it anymore. Like you have to be at the top of the first page.
Yeah. And that's where I know it's like you go and look at Vrbo, go and look at Airbnb, Booking, like they all have those badges. Like if you're not getting one of those badges, and you're getting pushed down, way down in search.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that just got to keep the big PMs. I know this is always something that's very scary. So just more reason to keep paying attention to those reviews every week, so you don't fall to the bottom of page 1 now, which apparently is the thing. Well, anything exciting for you guys coming up this week?
Yeah, we're going to look at a property in North Georgia. So Jamie, I'll wave to you as I drive through the city. But aside from that, same old.
Same old. Jamie, how about you?
Not traveling this week, which
Very
is
nice.
awesome. And then doing a guys weekend this weekend. Got 10 of my best friends. We're all going up to our property up in North Georgia and enjoying it with some friends. So
that sounds
beautiful.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That does sound
Well,
great.
thank you,
Brandy.
Oh, I'm same old. I'm it got dramatically colder here overnight, so I think I might have to go do my second round of like winter shopping. So just continuing to acclimate to not Miami weather.
It'll take you one season.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, especially our live viewers, Paul, Alexandra, Tom. We always appreciate people engaging with us during the show. We'll post our links to the articles that we talked about today in the show notes, and we'll see you all next week.